freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is fundamentally important to our democracy, to our media. It is the one thing that is, well, dare I say it, the main foundation to what an ideal society should strive for, the right to speak. Now, unfortunately, we're not following through with that principle. As we have seen, since Heartland's Media got started way back in 2017, and since we are the world heavyweight champions of being censored on YouTube, hey, we got that belt. We're number one. Can't censor us. We're still here. But however, I do fear that we are entering into some dangerous times, and we have been proven correct about just how deep the censorship truly goes. Case in point with the Facebook files, and most notably, front and center, the Twitter files, which revealed how government agencies were working with social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook in regards to what stories could be shared on social media. Now, this was before Twitter was bought by Elon Musk, but it's very important that we do address just how bad this truly was, because we've talked about shadow suppression, people being deplatformed, demonetized, censored, shadow banned, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff. And we've covered how numerous people on the left and on the right have been censored. Activists, politicians. I mean, hell, even Tulsi Gabbard in 2020, when she was running her presidential campaign, she was not once but twice the most Googled name until Google and YouTube decided to drop their jackboot on her. And also how third parties have been censored and deplatformed. So this is something that we are all too familiar with. And of course, when we did bring up the fact, and if other people brought up the fact of, well, wait a minute, maybe there are government agencies, institutions, groups that are working with these social media tech giants that are censoring and silencing people. And we are proven correct with most notably the Twitter files. Now, why am I bringing up the Twitter files? Because yesterday, there was a big debate between Briahna Joy Gray and Matt Taibbi. And before I pull up that debate, it's very important to cover how we got here, because there was a bit of a back and forth in regards towards how Matt Taibbi was covering the Twitter files, to which I have to say, I think he did the best job he could with what was available to him at the time. I'm not going to sit here and be an armchair general and say he should have done this and he should have done that. I think he did the best he could with the resources and time that he did have, because yes, he did have a falling out with Elon Musk. Okay, I thought that was really BS, but I think Matt Taibbi, especially in this debate that I will be playing in a little bit, explained to the best of his ability how he was able to get as much information out there as possible, and it was confirmed. This has to be made very important. Confirmed that there is a bias and a narrative that was being controlled by the establishment and through social media, and of course through corporate media, onto what the people could see on the various platforms that what was going to be reported to them. All right. A lot of stories, a lot of people have been suppressed and censored. And because of that, it's opened up the doorway for it to continue on. And unfortunately, we've learned nothing from the Twitter files, because the people in power are still dictating what can and cannot be seen. And we have this election cycle where you have so many triggered people who are happily ready to give up their First Amendment right because they're triggered by the orange boogeyman or something else that's frightening them. Or maybe because there's certain groups, APAC, sorry, that don't want to be criticized. Just saying. I am just a saying. So let's go ahead and just do wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. And go back in time. Just for a little bit. We're going to go ahead and go back in time to March 16th of 2024. Just a little bit. Twitter Files journalist Matt Taibbi must prove to be very disappointing on the free speech issue. And I think a lot of you in my viewing audience, especially on the left and on the right, have called out how, Elon Musk says he's a champion of free speech. Depends on how you use your speech. But no, it turns out everyone's disappointing. Don't put people on a platform. Don't put them on a pillar. Former Twitter Files reporter Matt Taibbi said the billionaire Elon Musk has proven to be very disappointing on the topic of free speech. Taibbi, who published the first installment of the Twitter Files after Musk bought the platform, argued that Tesla CEO has fallen short of his promise of being a free speech absolutist. I do believe that Elon proved to be very disappointing on the free speech issue. All of us who worked on the Twitter files felt the same way. We went in feeling tremendously optimistic that he actually meant a lot of the things that he said about being in favor of all legal speech and being a free speech absolute and all these things. That proved not to be the case. He's currently disenfranchising thousands of Substack writers, which he did have a falling out with Matt Taibbi about that, including me. And no one seems to care in the press. So that's what Taibbi told good old Chris Cuomo. The posts, which were published on X, formerly known as Twitter, showed purported screenshots from internal communications at the company of top executives discussing on how to handling the publishing of the New York Post story with it potentially damaging allegations against Hunter Biden. Remember the Hunter Biden laptop story? Now, Taibbi's remarks came when Cuomo asked him to react to an excerpt from former CNO's Don Lemon, interview with Musk. Lemon asked Musk during an interview if he believed he and his platform bear responsibility to moderate hate speech. On the other hand, in that interview, Don was asking Elon why he wasn't censoring speech more. Taibbi said he was asking about hate speech, which is legal in the United States. And the question, why aren't you doing more to moderate legal speech? It's a little odd to complain about a free speech issue when you yourself are asking to do the same thing. Now, also, when Matt Taibbi was looking into the Twitter files, he did have a conversation with Briahna Gray way back in March 10th of 2023. And this video was posted. It's just a small excerpt of her show, The Bad Face Podcast, in which, he says, I haven't done a search on Sanders. I've done search on Assange, but not much turns up. It's just not my priority to discern exactly what happened in the Nevada election. So let's go ahead and pull up this video. I think it's just important to set the foundation of what happened yesterday. So let's go ahead and play this.
Tell me more about looking for it. I mean, what kind of searches have been done to try to investigate what was going on at Twitter around some of the Bernie bot, Bernie bro narratives in 2016 and 2020?
Let's just say that I've searched for anything involving the government and claims about Russia.
And Bernie?
No, not Bernie specifically, because I haven't done a search on Sanders. I've done a search on Assange, but not much turns up. It's just not. It's not my priority to try to discern exactly what happened in the Nevada election.
And to which I have to say, look, knowing what we know now, and I think a lot of people already were made aware of it, especially after the 2020 election, because if we didn't figure it out then you need help. Bernie Sanders turned out to be a nutless wonder. Not once, but twice, 2016 and 2020, he gave up the goose. I mean, honestly, I've had some Trump supporters ask me, hey, how come Bernie Sanders didn't fight as hard as he did? Or what's wrong with Bernie? To which I have to say, he always was a cuck. He never said he never meant what he said. He wasn't who he said he was. And, if you're asking me to debate about Bernie Sanders and Trump, I'm not going to humor it because I have nothing nice or positive to say about Bernie Sanders. He purposely abandoned his people. He didn't fight. Okay, he didn't fight. That's we got to come to terms about Bernie Sanders. All right, there's not going to be a great treasure chest saying, "Hey, here's what happened to Bernie." We know what happened. He cucked out. He flunked out. That's it. That's what happened to Bernie. All right, and the only thing I have to live with now for the rest of my life is the kind words I said about Bernie Sanders in 2016 and through 2020. That's what I got to live with, and I think a lot of other people got to live with that too. But now, when we see it all laid out, this is who Bernie Sanders was. He wasn't going to fight. So all this mystery of what happened, yes, the DNC did commit election fraud to deny Bernie Sanders a nomination. They were in favor of Hillary Clinton in 2016. They were in favor of Joe Biden in 2020. No big mystery there. No big mystery there. Bernie never was who he said he was. So why look into it? Because if he's going to be a cuck, then a cuck is going to be a cuck. Am I being mean? Yes. And I won't apologize.
And, I was looking for one thing. Like, for instance, I didn't go looking for the Hamilton 68 story. That just happened to be because I was looking for Russia and some other stuff. And then I find this conversation about it. And it's a big deal internally at Twitter because it speaks to a larger issue about how these digital censorship organizations operate, like what their methodologies are. So there's a lot of talk about it back and forth inside the company, which was really, really interesting. Now, mostly, you're not going to see a whole lot of stuff where they say interesting things in these emails, because mostly they're all in agreement about things. Like, again, most of the moderation is automated.
And has there been any searches about the nature of the algorithmic programming, since the overwhelming majority of the
Well, yeah, we did a little bit of that at the beginning, when, especially when Barry, did the stuff on, visibility filtering. We tried to make a whole glossary of how they do that. But again, once we got that story, once I found this other thing, I just focused on that. I left all that behind.
Now, there's a little bit more. Before I pull up the main debate, because I know all of you are waiting for it, but this is like the appetizers, because we have to understand, because when Briahna Joy Gray and Matt Taibbi start going after each other, it's having this little heated exchange, I think it's important that we understand why. You have to lay down the foundation. It's important for that. It's an art form. It's a perfect art form. And we have to explain what exactly went down. So first of all, I want to pull up another video here. And this was from the Jimmy Dore show, where Matt Taibbi acknowledges that there's censorship against both the left and on the right. Because in that video segment there, it looks like Matt Taibbi's just dismissing Bernie Sanders, which he's not. I mean, he went before Congress. He went before Congress and gave a testimony on how he acknowledged that there is a problem and that there's a full-on censorship against those on the left and on the right. So no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, you're going to get censored. The establishment wants to have its neoliberal control over the system. Corporate media is already an institution that's beginning to fail. Will it fall overnight? No. But their next best bet is to control social media. That's where corporate media will worm its way into. They're already inside it, but, they have yet to full on have that control. And the only way they can control it is by dictating who can and cannot speak. So I want to pull up this video here and let's check it out. Shout out again to Jimmy Dore show. Jimmy Dore, who's currently on tour in Europe. Represent Chicago, buddy.
Again, Ranking Member Plaskett, I would note that the evidence of Twitter government relationship includes lists of tens of thousands of names on both the left and right. The people affected include Trump supporters, but also left-leaning sites like Consortium and Truth Out, the leftist South American channel Telesur, the Yellow Vest movement. That, in fact, is a key point of the Twitter files, that it's neither a left nor right issue.
Well, Jimmy, so the reason why Democrats and their media cheerleaders can ignore comments like Matt there that you just played, where he talks about how the censorship and silencing has also been directed against leftist sites like Telesur, Truth Out, and Consortium News, is that Democrats don't care about sites like Telesur and Consortium
That's
News.
right.
Because Consortium News actually challenges power and actually challenges the national security state. And all those people who identify as being on the left, who are trying to minimize the reporting Matt is doing here, they don't challenge power themselves. They don't actually challenge the national security state. So they don't care if a site like Consortium News, which actually does, is silenced, because they don't consider that site as being a part of their club. So that makes it, so they just ignore that and try to make this a partisan thing and try to pretend as if Matt Taibbi is serving some kind of Republican narrative. It's not Matt Taibbi's fault that Democrats have embraced not just censorship, but deranged conspiracy theories, like the conspiracy theory that Russia was somehow behind Hunter Biden's laptop, or that Russia was conspiring with and blackmailing Trump. When we were challenging that, yes, we were challenging a conspiracy theory that was unfairly aimed at Trump. But we weren't doing that to defend Trump. We were doing that because it was a dumb conspiracy theory that was very dangerous and served a whole bunch of nefarious ends.
Which led us to currently in this horrific conflict that we are seeing in Ukraine, this escalation of further intensifying more conflict with Russia, China. We got this horrific genocide taking place in Gaza. So all this stuff has led to ongoing wars, in which, again, if people do call out, you get censored or suppressed. We here at Hardlands Media have dealt with censorship and suppression. When we talked about people like Julian Assange, or when we talked about COVID, or when we talk about anything else. I mean, the most hilarious one was when we got censored by YouTube because we covered a story about how CNN was smearing Joe Rogan, and we were told we were telling people, YouTube said we were giving false medical misinformation when we were covering a story about how CNN smeared Joe Rogan. We didn't say anything medical whatsoever in that video. Whatsoever.
And that's the part that these people can't grasp. So it's not Matt Taibbi's fault that Republicans are taking advantage of this issue, because Democrats have given them that gift because they're pro-censorship. So the answer to all this is not to attack Matt Taibbi for reporting on it. It's to try to pressure Democrats to stop supporting censorship and stop supporting deranged conspiracy theories like the ones that we've been challenging.
And I again want to give a huge shout out to Turncoat Don, who posted that clip. Now, whatever your criticisms are of how the Twitter files were done, I think Matt Taibbi did the best he could. Now, for the main course, what happened yesterday and the big back and forth, Briahna Joy Gray versus Matt Taibbi, the smackdown over Twitter files and Elon Musk and how they handled it. And I think in the long run, looking back at all of his work, we got our confirmation. We know it. We know it. The evidence is there. The political establishment wants they have control over the media. Well, their donors have control over the media, just like how they have control over the politicians, and which in turn, they want to have more control over social media. And who else could have done a better job? I think Matt Taibbi did the best job that he could. So let's go ahead and play this video. I feel sorry for our boy way there on the right. He's like the little kid watching mom and dad fight.
Thanks for having me on, Robbie.
Yeah, very good to have you here. I also wanted to, make sure that, because that tweet that allegedly contained, what your thinking was that a fair characterization of how you think and what your reporting's doing?
Yeah, that was a Substack note, so it was verbatim. They just put it on Twitter.
Oh, okay. That's helpful to know. So, Matt, I understand that you think that I and Zed Jelani in my attempt to articulate what Zed Jelani's position was got some things wrong. Where do you think we erred?
Well, Briahna, I mean, I don't want to be difficult about this, but there were a bunch of things on your show that were, I thought, were concerning. Number one, you said that I waited a year to tell everybody what happened with Elon. I actually didn't do that. I announced it the day that it happened in an article that I know that you read because you've referenced it on the air before. I talked about being placed under a blanket search ban and all the other things that had been done, including the removal of the Twitter file stories. So the notion that I didn't tell the world that an influential journalist had been censored, that's not true. I've done that repeatedly in the last year, and I did it as soon as it happened in my case. It's also not true that I've declined to criticize him in the past year, and that I've still declined to do so. I've done it fairly regularly, as a matter of fact.
And as I've pulled up an article from last month of 2024, he did criticize Elon Musk, and they did have a falling out. Now, Matt Taibbi is going to go ahead and explain in detail about what kind of relationship he had with Elon Musk. And you look, to his credit, he was able to get as much as he could. It's easy for us to say he should have done more, should have done this, or should have done that. If he went in with the Twitter files, with all these other reporters, and started saying F you to Elon Musk, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you would like to say that, we would not have even gotten a fraction of what we have seen before us right now. I think in order to do this, especially in this day and age, I wish we lived in an idealistic world, but we don't. He got all the information we could. Is there more? The answer is yes, probably. But to say that he didn't do his job of being critical of Elon Musk or of anything else afterwards with the Twitter files it's a mistake.
Matter of fact, some of those instances have actually kind of gone viral. I gave an interview to Chris Cuomo, for instance, where I talked about how he's been a big disappointment on free speech. I've gone after him on his own platform, calling him out multiple times in the last year. Another thing that I found was concerning, you said that when I was declining to answer questions, for instance, that things that Mehdi Hassan was asking me about, say, for instance, Elon's speech policies with India, you said that the Twitter file searches had been done and that as far as you understood it, we had gotten them all in one cache at the beginning of the process. I don't know where you got that from. I'm actually curious to ask, because that wasn't the case. We had multiple, it was dozens of different document dumps, and we were getting them at different times, and I was actually due to get results right up until the moment that Elon had his meltdown and I was cut out of the process.
Let's take those two. Let's take both of those, Taibbi. So 100%, I'm not as clear on the timeline of how these things happened as you, but the core point that I was articulating and that I think was reflected in some of the pushback that you've been getting is that we have from you in
those aren't core point issues. Those are fact issues.
I completely concede them. I have no investment in a misstatement that I made. So I want to get to what I meant, so I completely concede. But the core issue from my perspective is not the specific timeline, which I completely accept. I may have misrepresented or misremembered.
Now, maybe she's a little upset because he didn't cover certain stories that she wanted, but nonetheless, we got a good portion of stuff out there that has led to a lot of things that have, for a long time, especially critics of independent media, people said we were crazy, that, oh no, there's no one controlling who gets seen and who doesn't get seen. No, there is somebody who controls it. It's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, on these major platforms. Why do you think there's a rise of so many alternative platforms like Rumble, Rockfin, Odyssey, and so many others? Why do you think that there's different platforms rising up? Because we are seeing that there is someone who's control of what is seen by the people and what doesn't get seen by the people.
But your own statement in the text messages that you released between you and Elon Musk, in which you said, quote, Elon, I've repeatedly declined to criticize you, and I had nothing to do with your beef on Substack. So can you appreciate how people could read a statement like that and say, well, obviously at some point, Matt Taibbi had criticisms of Elon Musk that he chose not to make public. And maybe there's a very good journalism reason for you to think, I'm doing this so that I can get more Twitter files. Yeah, that's completely reasonable, but that is also a negotiation, right?
Briahna, we'll get to that in a moment, but you also went into a whole tirade about how I waited a year to release the information that I had been censored, and that is just totally factually
untrue. What I was referring to was that
you also
let me clarify. Well, Matt Taibbi, I don't mean to argue with you. I have no investment. I have no interest in attacking you or making you look bad. If I got something wrong, let's talk about it. So what I was pointing to, and correct me if I'm wrong, this doesn't have to be adversarial, Matt. What I was pointing to is the fact that these text messages are from April 10th of 2023. And the reporting on the text messages is from February 16th of 2024. That's the year gap that I'm referring to. So help me understand why is it that there was the release, the reporting on the title of this New Republic article, for instance, called Twitter Files, Matt Taibbi says Elon Musk sent him unhinged messages. That reporting happened in February of 2024, but the messages themselves are dated of April of 2023, almost a year before.
But Briahna, you know this because, and again, I can't stress this enough. I know this because you've referenced the article that I wrote. The day that happened, I put out an article on my site called Meet the Censored: Me that detailed everything that happened, including the fact that I had been placed under a blanket search ban and that my own Twitter files had been taken down temporarily from Twitter. In fact, I had to explain this at some length to the audience so that they understood why I was uploading the Twitter files on my site, because they had been taken down from X. The only thing that was new about that article that you referenced was that I was trying to tweak Elon maybe into communicating by releasing the actual snapshots of the text exchange. There was no new information in there except for some of his, behavioral stuff. But the
and look, in regards to this, and I'm trying to keep my pausing at a minimum because Matt Taibbi is doing a fantastic job defending himself. I think we've all seen our fair share of Elon Musk kind of going off on the deep end in Twitter. All right, and while early on when he was talking about I'm a free speech absolutist, That sounds good on paper, but you have to follow through on it. All right. Now, we here at Hard Lens Media, we've interviewed guests who are Greens, libertarians, socialists, activists, community organizers, other content creators, independent journalists, etc. And we want to hear from all perspectives and points of view. But the thing is, when you say you're a free speech absolutist, you have to follow through on it. But what have we noticed with Elon Musk, especially now that he has X, Twitter, under his control? Well, I mean, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Has anything fundamentally changed? Because I see how both people on the left and the right, surprise, surprise, have either been shadow banned or censored, had their account terminated, or had to build a new account. I mean, we have seen this all the time. And this is something I'm all too familiar with, especially if you get started in this kind of business. 2017, when we got started, I've noticed that the level of censorship keeps on intensifying and intensifying. And I am ever fearful of the jackboot dropping down on us. Because why? We know through the work of Matt Taibbi and other brave journalists, through their work and dedication, there is clearly agencies from our own federal government that go into head and knock on the doors of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, etc., who will then dictate what can and cannot be seen. How many times have you seen YouTube change its guidelines, or Instagram or Facebook? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg himself on Joe Rogan's show more or less just said, yeah, the same thing that's happening to Twitter, it happened to Facebook too. We've seen this, and it becomes a joke.
Stuff about the censorship, I quoted directly from that the day that it happened. So again, there's no substantive way you can claim that I held back any information about that incident until this year. I've been talking about it. In fact, the only reason I don't talk about it more is because I'm afraid of boring people about it.
I think we might be just confusing a couple of different things here. Of course, we covered and we've talked at length about the kind of the big blow up in and of itself about Substack and Elon having this kind of bizarre misunderstanding of what Substack was and feeling like it was somehow competing with Twitter and wanting you not to publish on your own Substack. Of course, we covered that. And that is not what I was referring to. As I just mentioned, I'm talking about this gap between the text, the obviously dissonant exchange that you were having with Elon Musk, in which you articulated a concern that, you had been withholding criticisms of Elon Musk, and he didn't seem to be kind of responding to that. Yeah,
that's a different thing, and that's not what you were saying in your show. You were saying that I held back from the world, that an influential journalist had been censored. Go back and listen to the look at the transcript of your own show.
Now, Briahna, maybe it's time to say, "Hey, Matt, I'm sorry." All the work that Matt Taibbi has done, with everything that he's been stating forward so far, he has been consistent in laying down the facts. Hell, we've had people in Congress try and threaten Matt Taibbi with jail time, for Christ's sakes. Okay, he did his job. And what it did is it embarrassed the establishment. And the last thing the establishment wants to do is be embarrassed, okay? That goes for Democratic politicians. And as much as people want to hold out for hope that somehow Bernie or AOC herself are going to step up and do the right thing, no, don't ever expect that at all, because AOC has, as well as the other members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, have fallen in line with the Democratic narrative, similar to Republican politicians as well, because they're all part of the same club of dictating who has a right to say what, because these politicians don't like to be criticized. Remember, there is a control narrative that we are living under. We know it. Due Dissidence knows it. Jimmy Dore knows about it. RBN knows about it. Hell, INN knows about it. INN's been kicked hard by the censorship. So, folks, it is a very serious thing. And Matt Taibbi, being critical of Elon Musk, he has done it. But in order to get what he had to do, he had to work and figure out the best way possible to get all this information out there for the public to see.
I'm referring to your quote here, and I wonder if you could just, because I think it might be a little boring for the audience for it to become some interpersonal dispute between us. And also, I
understand you want to move on to this other thing, but that's not what happened.
I specifically quoted. excuse me, I'm sorry, but I specifically quoted this in the episode, right? In the segment. So I just wondered if you could respond to that, because I didn't feel like I was misrepresenting you by simply quoting your own tweet to Elon Musk, right? And what you said on April 10th of 2023, Elon, I've repeatedly declined to criticize you and had nothing to do with your beef with Substack.
And
that's
my understanding of that.
Here comes Robbie. Now look, Robbie, this is the one time I love you, buddy. Are you okay? Do you need a hug after this? We're gonna rewind this because Robbie chimes in and then he's told to shut up.
To do with your beef with Substack.
And
that's
my understanding of that exchange. Go ahead. My understanding.
Okay. Wrong one. Sorry, it's a little bit later on. I'm sorry, I got that wrong.
Of that was that, right, you were still hoping to have a productive relationship with Elon at that point for the publishing of additional Twitter files, and that's why you might have said, I didn't find that a particularly damning thing to say, but go ahead.
We can get into that, and I'm happy to talk about the reasoning for that. But just to be absolutely clear, Briahna, that is not what you said in your show. You were talking about me withholding information about the censorship.
What information?
You said I withheld for a year that an influential journalist had been censored on Twitter. And I didn't. I talked about it immediately. I've been talking about it nonstop. Every time I mention Elon on Twitter, I talk about how he's stepping on my account and de-amplifying.
I'm genuinely confused, and I perhaps don't have I obviously don't have the kind of mental capacity and encyclopedic memory that you've demonstrated in all of your public appearances and in your reporting over the years. So I apologize if I genuinely just don't remember what you're alluding to.
One apology, but then double down back on it it.
What I do remember is wanting to understand what was being withheld, as I understand it, as I'm sitting here today, what I believe and what I think the criticism that is legitimate of how you handled this is, as opposed to all the illegitimate criticism that we talked about at length on this show, is what you were declining to criticize without having a better understanding of what that was. Maybe we can just talk about what that was, and we can see maybe it was things that are legitimate to withhold if you think it's going to continue a relationship where you're getting a lot of important journalistic content out of it, right? Or maybe it's not. And I think what would be clarifying is to have some insight into what you meant by decline to criticize you, because that seems to me to be where the bulk of the
No, that seems to be what you want to talk about. But let's just be clear. I'll be done with this in 18 seconds, okay? Just to be clear, you made factual mistakes about when I revealed that I was being censored. You made a mistake in saying that I still haven't criticized them. I haven't criticized them over the last year. You made a mistake in saying the Twitter file searches were not done. You made a mistake in saying that there was one cache. I don't know where you got that from.
It was a mistake, baby. I have no interest in denying that.
Now, when I first heard that, just add in a humorous note. I thought she said that was a mistake, baby. She says it was a mistake, Taibbi. At first I had to rewind it just to hear it over again. Just hear. I know. Am I being petty for that statement right there? Oh, absolutely. But sometimes this is just pure gold.
That from
it was a mistake, baby.
Taibbi. She didn't say baby. It was Taibbi.
There was one cache. I don't know where you got that from.
It was a mistake, baby. I have no interest in denying that. But I would like to talk about that a little bit, though, because when you came on mine,
there's more.
Okay.
Look,
go.
Hey, Sid the Kid, 87. It was Taibbi, not baby. All right, now knock it off. I'm just saying. When I first heard it, I had to rewind it a few times. It's like she didn't say baby. It was Taibbi. It was a mistake, baby. Am I going to hell? Yes. Don't worry. I'll see all of you when I'm in hell from heaven. When all of you up in heaven, okay? Hey, send me some of that good heaven food, okay?
Go ahead. We had you on because we wanted to make sure we get to all of this.
I would have been happy with it.
Robbie, shush, Junior. Go to your room, Robbie.
correction, but since you're not going to do that, okay. The other two were, you were saying that essentially that I had done searches only for one side and not the other.
Well, Matt, let's talk about that, because I didn't say you had done searches for one side or than the other. I said I had you on my show, and you got very bristly with me at that time as well. I wish we could have these conversations without them turning into these weird personal vendettas. I think we'd have a lot more productivity in the space if we did.
Let's not have.
But wait a minute, Robbie, this is not necessary for you to intervene.
That was it. I was waiting for that. Yes, Robbie, shut up. Just had to pull that up there. Sorry. It took a while. I had notes and then they got deleted. I know, stupid me before the show, but hey, I'm not perfect.
I said I had you on my show, and you got very bristly with me at that time as well. I wish we could have these conversations without them turning into these weird personal vendettas. I think we'd have a lot more productivity in the space if we did.
Let's not have.
But wait a minute, Robbie, this is not necessary for you to intervene at this juncture.
Oh, sorry. This calls for it.
Oof. 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 Oof.
Oh man, that was great. That's great. Miguel H., you're a saint for getting that clip for me, man. You're a saint. You're a saint.
What I said to you on my show was I asked you if you
one more time.
Bristly with me at that time as well. I wish we could have these conversations without them turning into these weird personal vendettas. I think we'd have a lot more productivity in the space if we did.
Let's not have.
But wait a minute, Robbie, this is not necessary for you to intervene at this juncture. What I said to you on my show is I asked you if you had ever done a search about Bernie Sanders specifically and censorship against the left kind of Bernie Sanders movement back in 2016. And you seemed, and I wish we had pulled up a clip, but people can go and look for it on themselves on Bad Faith Podcast. But you seemed almost kind of surprised and caught off guard by that question. And you answered truthfully, no. And I said, well, that seems to me, from my own subjective political interest, they don't have to be interests that you share, obviously, but from my own subjective political interest as a leftist, a kind of curious choice. Is that not accurate?
Well, yes, but you're implying that I was looking in the other direction and not in that direction. I wasn't looking in either direction.
I said a factual statement, which was that you admitted that you hadn't searched specifically for kind of Bernie-related material.
That is true,
but right?
But I wasn't looking for information on the right either. I was looking at the DHS, FBI, ODNI, the Global Engagement Center, the Election Integrity Partnership. Those are the kinds of searches I was doing. The stuff that was turning up is the stuff that was turning up. And just to get this out of the way, you also said that I hadn't reported on this issue. I've only reported on this issue in one direction. That I haven't. That mainstream media. There aren't people in mainstream media who are doing.
Hey, Prime 54. Who are you implying that they dated on the down low? Who are you implying, buddy? What are you implying, buddy? Buddy, what are you implying? Prim 54. All right. If you're implying something, you're implying something. You're not stating it as a fact, sir. Just throwing it out there.
Coverage of this issue from, the concerns of the left side. I've been doing that for years. I've been constantly writing about censorship of figures on the left.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right about that, Matt. But if I could articulate, I think what the concern is.
Now, I want to pause here again. So, look, you can see the full interview, the rest of it on The Hill Rising. But I think from what we can ascertain, what we could see from the whole conversation, especially with Matt Taibbi, once again explaining the work that he did for the Twitter files, under Elon Musk, of course, getting as much information as possible. Now, I'm pretty sure at first there was probably a lot of hope, the audacity of hope. Never have it. It's always the first pass of disappointment in regards to seeing just how deep this situation is with a lot of these agencies, these alphabet agencies, controlling what is seen by the public. Now, we know that there's a censorship. We know that the media is controlled by corporations, all right? The evidence is out there. The corporations control everything that we see and hear through CNN, through MSNBC, Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post, etc. I could be here naming all the corporate media entities that are out there, and they're all controlled by the top 1%ers. Same way that they control our politicians. Now, right now, what are we witnessing at this point in time? the absolute collapse of that business model. Americans are struggling to make ends meet. We are stuck in needless wars. And yet at the same time, too, these politicians say they don't have money for our infrastructure and our schools. And in turn, we see them bail out banks and have money for endless wars. Now, with the invention of the internet, with social media, especially taking off in the aftermath, of course, we saw it during the Obama administration, but I think more so how social media has really become part of our lives is the aftermath of the 2016 election cycle. We use it to do business, we use it to speak, and we use it to share our opinions. Now, because of the power of the internet, one tweet, one video, one post can shake the foundations of the world. And many of these politicians are now put toe-to-toe with the public, in which they used to have a good distance away. Now we see who these people are. We see how we get lied to. And as soon as the old guard of politicians dies off or retires, they get replaced by a same other person. And in turn, the establishment doesn't like losing control, which is why we see so many of our stories and so many people in independent media and other people on the left and the right getting censored, deplatformed, demonetized, etc. Matt Taibbi did his job. I think he did the best he could with the time and resources necessary available to him to get the task done at hand. Now, because he didn't cover Bernie Sanders, what's there to cover about Bernie Sanders? What's there to cover about anyone else there? He did the job. And he explained himself numerous times, with Briahna Joy Gray constantly trying to twist it around and Robbie being told to go to his room. At the end of the day, I want to have democracy in the chat. Who do you think really came out on top of this debate? Type 1 for Briahna Joy Gray. Type 2 for Matt Taibbi. Because I think it's important that we look at overall the conversation. What was taking place here? He defended himself, and he did a fantastic job. He didn't do anything wrong, and now he moves on to the next thing. Is Elon Musk a free speech absolutist? Well, from certain people who I've been following on social media whose platforms being demonetized or censored or shadow banned, yes, he is not a free speech absolutist. All right? No one's 100%. But this is starting to become a joke. So shout out again to Matt Taibbi, who's been doing a fantastic job. He got a lot of hate for it. He got a lot of threats because of the work that he did. And now he's moving on. I think it's important that we keep our heads on a swivel out here and just be aware, especially as we get closer to November, how maybe some of you will not be notified when your favorite independent media networks go live or they post something on social media or they disappear like that. It's all too real out here. It's a dangerous world we're in. And at this point in time, the First Amendment is at risk. So keep your heads on a swivel, folks.